From an array of highly secure, top secret locations throughout South Texas, this is the final Spurs Insider podcast of the year 2020. It is the first Spurs Insider podcast of the 2020-2021 NBA season. I am Mike Finger, back with Nick Talbot, Tom Ringo Starr Orsborn, and Jeff Hot Take McDonald, who just created a storm during last week's podcast. I am told that we're actually down a listener this week because some people have left outraged by Jeff Hot Take McDonald's hot take. And we're going to start right there. Jeff, last week you predicted the San Antonio Spurs might be the worst team in the Western Conference, would start the season 0-3. How do you feel about that right now?
The one listener we lost was my brother.
Yeah.
He said, "This guy's an idiot. I'm out of here."
He knows you best.
I think I'm being mischaracterized a little bit. Did you say predicted? I did not predict such a thing. I threw it out as a topic of discussion. What do you guys think about this? And you guys told me I was wrong, and I believed you.
Well, how do you feel about that now?
I think they're going to the finals. Well, no, they've played well. Even they didn't play particularly well in the loss, but they were competitive. They could have won that game. They could very easily be 3-0. They're looking like a team of people that know how to play with each other. And I would like it to amend my hot take, I guess, in that it looks like they're going to be pretty much fine against teams that are not named the Lakers, which that could be a problem coming up here in the next week or two. But against the Memphises and the New Orleans and even the Torontos of the world, they seem to belong in that on the floor with those guys, and they look good.
Among the many encouraging signs for the local Cagers this week.
Did you say local Cagers?
Yes, I'm trying to relate to the
you're still going for the demographic here with the 60 plus.
Exactly.
I think even that 1920s radio guy thinks you're a little over the top right now.
Well, I think one of the many encouraging things for the local Cagers this week were the way they were just the cat's pajamas, not only early in games, but against both the Raptors and the Pelicans. It seemed like they were in danger of going away and letting a game get out of control, and stayed competitive through the end against the Raptors. Had quite a finish involving a couple of the older guys that kind of put it over the top. And that Pelicans game could have got ugly on Sunday pretty quickly and still made it interesting down to the end. It's just not just a few guys playing well. It seems like the entire rotation is, and they're finding ways to stay in games even when it looks like they could lose games. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
They were getting up and down the court like a thin clads meet at Alamo Stadium. And those words, thin clads, cagers, gritters. When I started out, I'm dating myself. Those were accepted terms. We used them all the time.
Yeah. And how long did the Express News continue to thrive after you were using those terms? Decades. I predict the same thing for this podcast. We start out with these terms, and it's just going to continue. There's going to be no ceiling for the number of listeners. We might get into triple digits. I don't want to dare to dream that high, but triple digit listeners maybe by the end of the decade. I think that's worth shooting for.
Is everybody drunk this morning? Is this what's going on? Like, are we all still kind of?
There's a giddiness to the start of a season because for so long on this Spurs Insider podcast, we were talking about the same boring off-season narratives, debating the same old tired topics, and now there's games to talk about. There is new enthusiasm in the air with the San Antonio Spurs starting out. We haven't even mention their record, but they started out 2-1 with victories over the Memphis Grizzlies and the Toronto Raptors and a close loss to the New Orleans Pelicans. We're not going to be talking all season about draft positioning. I mean, they might end up not making the playoffs. They might end up 11th, 12th, 13th in the West. There'd be no shame in that. But at least it seems like there's going to be interesting stuff to talk about this year. And if that makes me intoxicated on some kind of optimism, then that's fine.
Why don't we talk about why old man Pop won't play Trey Jones?
Let's not ruin this podcast with cynicism and sarcasm and stuff like that. That was last year.
I'll see you guys later.
This is Jeff good for.
Exactly. Tom is the person who is the most reasonable, most down to earth, and I'm being over the top. Jeff is being the guy with the dark cloud
under
over
the top. Yes.
Tom, just a reasonable take on the first week of the Spurs season. What is the down the middle reaction to what you saw in those first three games?
They exceeded expectations. Optimism is high, but as Jeff pointed out, there's they got some tough tests ahead, and we'll find out on Wednesday just where they stand. But yeah, a lot of reasons for optimism. The young guys are showing up and playing really well. The old guys, with the exception of last night, are doing their part. So it seems to be a good blend of youth and experience, just like they hope they would have.
We talked about it going into the year, but it's all pace, right? I mean, that's really been the difference, is they're playing at the pace they want to be. I haven't checked the numbers today, but going into that New Orleans game, they were 7th in the league in pace, which they've always been. Even when they've tried to up the pace a little bit, they've always just not kept up with the league in that category. So they're playing faster and up tempo like they said they wanted to, and it seems to be working for them so far. It plays to the strengths of this team really well.
And I will say, no, they haven't played the Lakers yet. They haven't played the Bucks, whoever else, the Celtics, whoever else people are predicting as the absolute elite of the league. But these haven't been three bad teams. These are three teams that you could consider at least playoff contenders. Probably I would predict that two of those three for sure will be in the playoffs. I won't say which two, but
Toronto and another one.
Toronto, yeah. Either the Pelicans or Grizzlies could make it. So, I mean, the issue is that there's just not a team in the Western Conference that they're going to play all year that you're going to say, that team is terrible and is not going to make it. Maybe the Thunder. The Warriors haven't started out great. But I guess that's the next thing to get into. As well as the Spurs look this first week, it's not like other teams around the conference especially aren't feeling the same kind of enthusiasm and optimism. I mean, Sacramento started pretty strong. Minnesota started pretty strong. On down the line, it's going to be a tough battle for even those 9th and 10th spots all year. It's just, I guess if you're a Spurs fan, it's nice to know that there are reasons to believe that you can be one of those teams that are fighting for those spots. 3
of the next 5 games are against the Los Angeles Lakers, who I believe won a game yesterday by 427 points.
But not as much as the Mavericks did.
Right. The Mavericks won by 428.
Yeah. But the Mavs only won the second half by 1, though.
Yeah.
The next 5 games are going to be telling, though. I mean, 3 of the next 5 against the Lakers, of course, that's about as tough as you can get. But you also have games against the Jazz and the Clippers there, too, which, on paper, those are 2 for sure playoff teams.
And they may only beat the Clippers by 25.
Clippers are reeling.
But the record is not going to look great, I don't think, here in a week or two, just because of the strength of schedule. That would be my prediction. I would see that I wouldn't be surprised if the record doesn't look great, and then the schedule softens a little bit, and if they're still playing well, they can get some of those games back.
How much less do you think the edge is in terms of the home court advantage this year, having seen several of these games?
I mean, not to pull a pop, but I don't know how to measure that, but it's probably palpable or not palpable. I don't know how you want to phrase it, but it does make a difference, I would think.
Like it's probably, if it added 5% to a team in normal circumstances, maybe it's down to 2 or 3 now. I think it's definitely less. And I think that was kind of evident in the Pelicans game, where that's a game where Zion is snowbirding dunks and the Pelicans are pulling away, and in normal circumstances, the crowd could have gone crazy, and that might have been it.
Well, let me ask you this: since you actually were at a game in person, I think you're the only one on this podcast that was that Toronto game. So the kind of the go ahead play in that Toronto game is that possession where the Spurs missed 2 or 3 shots. Finally, LaMarcus Aldridge snags the rebound in traffic, puts up kind of a falling away shot off the glass for the lead. What was the reaction in the AT&T Center at that point? Because there's no fans. Like, what did anybody do anything? It was just the PA guy yelling.
It's bizarre. I mean, we're up there for fans who've been in the AT&T Center before. The HEB fan zone way up at the top on the west side of the arena, balcony level. So way up there is where they have us. They don't want us breathing any of the same air, if possible, as the players. You could hear like the Spurs bench from there, and that's about it. It's kind of bizarre that most years the arena would have just exploded for a play like that. And
Sean, I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead,
Tom.
Well, I was going to say Sean Elliott, who probably started his career being referred to as a cager, pointed out in the opener that Ja Morant's, his 44 points just kind of fell flat because the crowd's not there to go nuts and give them the advantage you would hope for in a great performance like that.
To bore people with more inside sports writing nonsense, a lot of times in the second half, when you're facing a deadline, you're doing a lot of writing. If whether you're courtside or higher up or anywhere in the Arena Bowl, you're kind of looking at your screen and hearing the crowd around you, and that provides your cues as to what's going on, whether you should look up or not, because you're kind of trying to write and watch and monitor at the same time. And the funny thing about Saturday was I'm spending a lot of the second half writing, and there's none of those. It's almost like just a murmur, and you can't really – there are no cues from the crowd to let you know who's on a run or what's going badly. And that was again, kind of an eerie, surreal vibe to the whole thing, and that it's just kind of 2 teams down there playing like at a YMCA or whatever. And I think that – to go back to what started this, I think that's going to have an impact on games throughout the year as long as fans aren't around, where that home team might not have as big of an edge as it had in the past.
And that's not going to change at the AT&T Center anytime soon, it sounds like.
Tom just had some breaking news on that. Go ahead and update our listeners.
Yeah, the Spurs announced this morning that they're scrapping the plan to begin having fans at the arena on a limited basis. They were hoping to start that on Friday, the New Year's Day game against the Lakers, but acting on the advice of public health officials and of course the county's top official, Judge Nelson Wolf, weighed in on that this weekend, recommending that they hold off on having fans due to the belief that numbers are going to spike. COVID numbers will spike after the Christmas gathering. So the Spurs followed that advice. They've set aside that plan. And it's going to be more YMCA type games at the AT&T Center.
And I think that's probably the responsible thing to do. It wasn't just one county official, I think, that turned this. I think the Spurs had been monitoring this like a lot of teams. I mean, I don't believe the Mavericks or the Rockets are having fans yet, are they, in the state of Texas?
Correct.
It's just not the thing to do. And in walking into the arena on Saturday, again, quiet parking lot outside. There's some security people there letting us in the entrance. I asked them about how they feel about being there. And one of them mentioned, well, we might have fans on Friday. And I said, I'm skeptical. And all four of them at the same time said, we are too. And in other words, like, even though they were ready, they were preparing, they knew that this announcement probably was coming just because you can read the news, what's happening out there. As Greg Popovich said the other night, they can't wait to have fans there. They value their fans like every other franchise in the league does. It's just they owe fans a safe environment, and that's not possible yet.
And this kind of felt like an ambitious plan when they announced it a couple weeks before the season, even, right? Like, I remember us talking about it on the podcast. Like, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull this off. And I guess kudos to the Spurs for not just stubbornly sticking to their guns because they said January 1st. So I feel like they're doing the right thing here.
Yeah. And one of the reasons, obviously, was because one of the reasons they were shooting for that is because of who they were playing on January 1st.
Right.
The Lakers that's one of the big crowds of the year. And to miss out on that gate.
Both of them. I mean, they're both the Lakers dates are this week, and they're going to have no fans on them. And then the Lakers aren't coming back. Right.
And for a team in a smaller television market that relies kind of disproportionately on arena revenue, they don't have the huge television contract that the Lakers or Knicks or one of those big teams have. It's significant to not have those dates. And no one in these times, in this era of American history, is going to play any violins or sad songs for an NBA team. But they're dealing with the same realities that a lot of people are, and
a lot of businesses. Yeah, I mean, even in the heyday when they're winning championships and the arena is packed every night and they're playing the maximum number of playoff games you can play, it was still kind of a break-even business year in and year out. Like the margins are that thin. So to lose all these home games, all these big home games, it's gonna leave a mark.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of a stark reality for them to get back into something that they can feel a little better about. We can get into the basketball itself, and one of the things that I was kind of intrigued by during this first week. I guess there was two parallel storylines. One about the Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Lonnie Walker, DeJounte Murray, that young guard that's kind of becoming a bigger part of the core. And we anticipated that would happen this year. But in all three of these games, the old guys have played huge roles. The last minute of the Raptors game, you had a DeMar DeRozan three-pointer that cuts a 4-point deficit to 1. You have the LaMarcus Aldridge putback that Jeff talked about earlier. After he had not had a great night, he gives them the lead. And then I believe Rudy Gay hits 2 free throws. And Patty Mills has had a huge first week. Basically, all 4 of the veteran upcoming free agents have played well this week. And I guess I'm wondering for the group how long we expect that to continue.
I'm going to quibble a little bit. LaMarcus has been not great. He's had his moments.
I agree. He had the play in a victory.
He had a big play, but that salvaged a really kind of iffy night for him. And then in New Orleans, he was basically might as well not have gone on the trip.
Right. Well, he only played 20 minutes. He
only played 20 minutes and was not.
He had a good opener, 20 points. But, in his defense, traditionally, he starts off slow every year since he's been a Spur. So not gonna pass judgment real quickly on him. I think, too, coming off that long layoff, just still needs to shake some rust and get his legs underneath him.
I guess I stand corrected on lumping LaMarcus into the group, but Patty Mills has played well. Rudy Gay has played well. DeMar DeRozan has played well, aside from maybe the last possession at New Orleans. And again, it's too early to make broad pronouncements about what this season is going to be, whether they need to be totally concerned about fighting for a playoff spot, abandoning the youth movement, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that if the young guys continue to become more and more part of the focus, while you still get those contributions from DeMar and Patty and Rudy, and if LaMarcus plays better, like those all could be good developments.
I think it's been a good mix so far. Like in the short term, I don't see any reason to change anything they're doing, really.
Yeah.
We haven't talked much about Keldon though, but that was sort of a surprise opening night start to me. I mean, we didn't even know he was on the trip until he's talking to us from Memphis. and then he's in the starting lineup and playing well.
And it makes a lot of sense when you were kind of going through the permutations of how lineups would unfold. Would LaMarcus play with Pirtle? How would they deal with the front court situation going into the year? Like one thing that I didn't anticipate, and I'm not sure any of us did, was that Keldon would become that starting four, and it makes a whole lot of sense. Like it makes everything kind of fit into place where LaMarcus is your starting center, Pirtle is your backup, and Pirtle's a great backup center, by the way. Love watching him play.
He's had a great start. I'm maybe irrationally in love with Jakob Pirtle.
Yeah. But being able to play Keldon at that four, where he can, wasn't he guarding Zion? Wasn't he guarding Siakam?
He went from guarding Siakam to guarding. That's the kind of thing he's going to have to be able to do in order for that to really, really work. But I mean, who else do they have? Like, even if he's not, I thought he did pretty good in both those matchups. But even if he does get beat in those matchups, who else do they have? Like, it's not like they've got some, stud over there that could shut those guys down. So you don't lose much, because he's going to be undersized for a four.
And that beats the option of either playing Aldridge and Pirtle together to have one of those two guys guarding one of those fours, and neither one of those guys are great against Zion or Siakam either, by the way.
No, exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
Or like adding more Trey Lyles, and Trey Lyles might become something. I'm not an anti-Trey Lyles person, but that's just not as dynamic or interesting with him in the lineup as it is with being able to go kind of small ball and letting Keldon play the four. Rudy as your backup four. I for all the grief that some Spurs fans have given Greg Popovich in recent years about lineups, I think so far this seems to be pretty forward-looking and interesting the way he's broken this down. We'll see.
So what happens when Derek's back in the mix? What impact does that have?
It's like Ringo read my mind about my next question. We'll let Jeff or Nick handle that first.
Go for it, Jeff.
Jeff might be gone.
Donald? Mueller?
Well, we can speak for Jeff. I think if Jeff were here, he would say that Derek White should be traded. Since he's not here, I think that if you look at the lineup, you like the way Keldon fits into that four spot. DeMar probably continues at the three, and then it becomes a question of either Lonnie Walker or Derek at the two, and I think either one of them could fit, and the other one comes off the bench. Derek seems like the kind of guy who would be able to swallow his pride a little bit and thrive coming off the bench with that second unit, and could be kind of the star of that unit. Everything run through him. That could be a way to go for the Spurs, but also you could play DeJounte and Derek together and let Lonnie play that role off the bench.
I know what Spurs Twitter would like to do with that. You just move Keldon to 5 and put LaMarcus on the bench. Play all 5 of those games.
Probably not going to happen. I mean, if LaMarcus does end up missing some time, and I do wonder about the thinking. Did Pop? I was not on the Zoom last night. Did Pop address the 20 minutes from LaMarcus? Was that about the back-to-back? Was that just play it by ear, or did he say?
Probably all of the above. Yeah. Before the game, Pop said there's no reason to worry about minutes and legs, and it's the third game of the year, which is kind of funny because that used to not be his reaction at all, his MO at all. But it's early, and we don't have to worry about minutes and who sits and who. But LaMarcus didn't play well.
He didn't.
He didn't play well.
Didn't. Well, my point is that if he's not on the floor, then Pirtle should be. And Pirtle is – I know that the numbers didn't necessarily bear this out because our friend Dan Weiss mentioned on the broadcast last night that the starting unit actually played at a much, much, much higher pace than anybody anticipated, and way higher than last year. Mm-hmm. And LaMarcus is part of that. But it seems like every time Pirtle comes in the game, they play even faster. And there's more activity. And that might not – the numbers might not bear that out, but he just brings this energy and this sense of pace that I think really works well with whether he's playing with the backup unit or the starting unit.
And he's such a great screen setter. He's a good roller. We've talked about it a lot. They talk about it on TV a lot. He should probably dunk more on those rolls instead of missing layups every now and then. I love watching him grapple for rebounds, though. That might be my favorite thing that he does. He gets a lot of rebounds you don't expect him to get. And that he's the one big on the team that does that, really.
I'm not sure if you had a Ringo-like lapse in your connection earlier when we brought up the Derek question, but you were given an opportunity to talk about the return of Derek White. Would you like to address that now? What you anticipate there?
No, I think you guys covered it pretty well. I had to hit pause to yell at my children. Sorry.
I see. I see.
What they like to do is they like to be quiet all day long until I'm doing something, and then they decide to start feuding.
To be fair, those moments when you're doing something are not very frequent, correct?
Well, they are now. I'm talking to you, idiots.
The reason for this podcast is to remind everyone to go to the Express News, to expressnews.com for your Spurs coverage. Lots of Jeff McDonald doing things, Tom Orsborn doing things, coverage of the Spurs. We have our Spurs Nation newsletter. Hit that up when you get a chance. Looking forward, we've mentioned this already this week, the Los Angeles Lakers at the AT&T Center with no fans on Wednesday and Friday, the Utah Jazz on Sunday. Tom Orsborn, give us a preview of what we might see over the next week.
It's going to be, I think I'm going to side with Jeff's cynicism or negative outlook here. It's going to be a tough
realism. Week. It's realism.
Realism. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're keeping it real. And I think it's going to be a tough week with the Lakers. But I mean, that's good. They need to find out where they're at and be in those kind of games and move on from there.
What do the Lakers do for 3 days in San Antonio around New Year's? Like when you can't really, there's not. Downtown is kind of shut down during a pandemic. I wonder about that. Like maybe they'll go so stir crazy that the Spurs will be able to jump on them on New Year's Day. Is that something?
You are an optimist. You're always popping sunshine on this thing. That's kind of your reputation. That is your reputation. It's a sunny, bright, sunshine pumping, eternal optimist who sees only the good in the world. That's you.
That's who I am. That's what I bring. He's
our Paul McCartney.
Around the league this week, we can close it looking at the rest of the NBA. We had the continuing drama in Houston, where James Harden has made his return. we had the Dallas Mavericks beating the Los Angeles Clippers by more than 50 points. Kawhi Leonard, seems to be some unrest there. We have the West continuing to look like a juggernaut from top to bottom. Any overall impressions of the association through the first week? I guess not.
I'm here. What'd you ask me?
What are you making your kids?
That time I just got bored.
What are you making your kids for lunch?
Huh?
What are you making your kids for lunch?
I mean, that's the problem. Feed us lunch, Daddy. They're so whiny.
Yeah.
I still think it's too early to have a lot of. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 3-0. I mean, there's not a lot you can make out of this early. A lot of teams are still feeling out what they have. So it's really tough. I mean, you look at the Warriors, and everyone thought they were going to be a lot better, but then Kelly Oubre can't hit I don't even think he's hit a jumper yet. He's only hit like 3 shots. He's awful. And so it's really hard to gauge everything. The Bucks are 1-2. The Celtics are 1-2. So I think it's still early, and in the next couple of weeks we'll start kind of feeling out where everyone's at. Like you said, the Spurs have the test these next 5 games to kind of figure out where they're at, and I think we'll see that with the rest of the NBA kind of come to fold too. And then we got to see where the James Harden saga goes. That could play out all year. We don't know, at least until the trade deadline.
Yeah,
I just bet the Spurs just can't wait to get to Minnesota. Get this like terrible stretch behind them. This rugged stretch behind them. And by the way, like going to Minnesota, like Minnesota's not terrible either. I don't know if Towns is going to be available for those games or not, but even your reprieve games aren't slam dunks.
Yeah. To overreact to this first week, do you feel how much more confident, how much more of a possibility do you think a playoff run is now than when we recorded this a week ago?
What I will say is that the chances of them finishing last or less to me are reduced. I feel worse about that hot take. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But again, all you have to do is get to 10th, and then you have a shot. So they could finish 8th, 9th, 10th, 7th. That seems doable after 3 games.
It does. And as we conclude what has been kind of a bummer a year for a lot of people, I guess it's not the worst thing to in this small corner of the world to think that something is doable. And at least the Spurs have something to build on going into next year. It could be a rough week. It could be a rough season. But there are reasons for optimism, and we will continue to be a bright, shiny corner of this world, a place for hope and rosy outlooks as we head into 2021, which should be better for everyone. And until we see you again, I implore you to take care of each other and to keep it real.
Peace.
Yes.
Such a peaceful exit.